Welcome, everyone. My name is Linur Gudjonsson. I'm the
Play some background music.
Icelandic ambassador in Canada, based in Ottawa. And I welcome you all to this event. It's a part of a lecture series organized by the Embassy of Canada in Reykjavik and the Embassy of Iceland in Ottawa, celebrating 75 years of diplomatic relations between our nation. And this event is in partnership with Canada's Ocean Supercluster and the Iceland Ocean Cluster. We have a slight change of the agenda. Minister Áslaug Arna Sigurbjörnsdóttir is at the Parliament as we speak in Iceland and had to step away from the computer to do some voting. Democracy in action here. So we'll move directly into our second part of the agenda, and we invite Kendra MacDonald, the CEO of Canada's Ocean Supercluster, and Thor Sigfússon, founder and chairman of Iceland Ocean Cluster, to deliver introductions to their organization. Kendra and Thor, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Before I get started, I am joining you today from Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship with Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy, peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Maliseet title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. I'm thrilled to be with you today. Last I spoke with Thor, I think the Ocean Supercluster was just getting started and we had a couple of projects. So it is pretty exciting to have the opportunity to share with you today some of the updates to what we're doing with the Ocean Supercluster. So I'm going to share my screen here. No, I cannot share my screen. I'm not sure if that can be addressed, or I will just keep talking. Am I able to share my screen? Okay, I will just keep talking. It's all good. So the Ocean Supercluster is one of 5 superclusters in Canada, and we were set up about 4 years ago in 2018. And the focus is really to change the way Canada invests in innovation and our innovation outcomes. And so the Ocean Supercluster is very specifically focused on growing the ocean economy for Canada. And one of the things that makes us different than previous investments in Canada in ocean is that we are cross-sectoral. And so I think I am able to share my screen here now. Excellent. And so we actually have members. We have over 400 members, and they are across multiple sectors. So we've got fisheries working with aquaculture and offshore resources, bioresources, transport, defense, ocean technology. And it's just really exciting. They face some common challenges, and seeing them work together to be able to address those challenges, very different risk profiles, backgrounds, but really trying to make a difference in the future of the ocean economy. What we are trying to do very specifically is change the way we're doing ocean business in Canada. So what we mean by that is we're trying to make it more digital, more sustainable, more inclusive, collaborative, and world leading. And so, as I mentioned, we now have over 400 members. We actually have a project portfolio of 360 million. As I mentioned, I think the last time I presented with Iceland, we had 2 projects announced. So now we have over 40 projects announced and over 60 that are approved. So we have a very significant portfolio. This just shows some of the areas where we are seeing investment and investment opportunity. So I'll spend just a couple minutes on a few of these areas, but you can see several in technology, areas as application to a particular sector. We're starting to see an increase in activity in carbon capture, lots of activity in sensors, which leads to sort of data, digital twin, et cetera, as well as a lot of activity in autonomous vehicles. So here you can see this is one of our projects with Exocean. And we're excited to have Sam on the phone for the panel. We'll talk about her area of focus as well. So lots in terms of being able to get better data for better decision making. So whether that's fish health or movement, remote monitoring, getting more people off the water, reducing footprint, there are several benefits to be able to use smaller vessels to be able to collect data. we're seeing more and more in sustainable blue economy, and in particular in decarbonization. So whether that's transitionary fuels, alternative fuels, electrification, we have a coatings project here in Nova Scotia that is looking at reducing drag and leaching to be able to reduce emissions, as well as a smart grid project to reduce reliance on diesel in rural communities. A few very specifically in the fisheries and aquaculture space. So we are seeing more and more in aquaculture in particular, given the significant global growth. And so anything from vessels to fish tracking to fish processing. Short is a project that looks at nets and being able to reduce the risk of harm to species, as well as sustainable fish feed. We have, and I know this is an area of focus for Iceland, one of our key projects very early on was to establish our startup project, and that is really trying to increase the number of ocean startups that we have in Canada. So without more startups, we don't have enough scale-ups. We can't sort of accomplish our overall objectives. And so this project has run 2 ocean challenges. It also has Creative Destruction Lab, which attracts like 75% of their participants that are international companies, as well as a project very focused on research, which is our lab to market project, which helps researchers understand what it takes to commercialize solutions. And so they have created over 30 companies through that project and supported over 80 companies over the last couple of years. And finally, to be able to achieve our desired outcomes around the ocean economy and to be able to tackle the very big challenges that we are facing in ocean, we really need to bring everyone to the discussion. And so our ocean economy is very traditional. Our technology sector is also struggling in terms of being inclusive. And so we really felt that this was an area where we needed to focus. And so we have several projects in our, what we call our ecosystem building, in terms of strengthening our ocean economy around talent. And so here's a few of them. Our Blue Futures Pathways project has a portal. And so that portal is designed to connect students 14 to 30 to ocean opportunities. So one of the challenges that we have in Canada is that people just don't know what the opportunities are in ocean. We think, marine science. We're not necessarily thinking, autonomous vehicles or artificial intelligence or robotics. A lot of the very interesting opportunities that exist in ocean today. We also have our Indigenous Career Pivot pilot, which has been really exciting. So that has been helping mid-career Indigenous, identified by our Indigenous working group, as an opportunity for them to be able to pivot into careers in ocean. And so it's a matching program. And we are now seeing, based on our first iteration of that, some of those moving into full-time roles with their companies because they've been so successful in those roles. And we're actually moving out of the pilot phase into full project phase. So excited to see that continue. And we had the opportunity to work with Amazon Prime, and they did a Future Code episode on us, and we've been leveraging that to be able to introduce grades 7 to 9 again to those opportunities in ocean. So the more that we can educate and the earlier we're able to do that, the more that we're able to attract a broader workforce into the ocean economy. So that was a lot. My timer just went off. I set it up right next to my speaker, which wasn't the best idea. But anyway, I look forward to further conversation as part of the panel and pass it over to Thor.
Thank you so much, Kendra. I see that our minister is back from voting at the Parliament in Iceland. So I welcome Áslaug Arna Sigurbjörnsdóttir, Iceland Minister of Science, Industry and Innovation since November 2021, to bring us her opening remarks. Áslaug Arna served as the Minister of Justice from 2019 to 2021 and has been a member of Althing, the Icelandic Parliament, since 2016. So Áslaug Arna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Hlynur, and starting by saying I'm sorry for my delay. The Parliament can somehow never promise you how long the voting is. But here I am, and it's a pleasure to be with you here today. So, dear participants in this Ocean, the Blue Economy and Innovation workshop, let me start by thanking our event organizer today, the Iceland Ocean Cluster and Canada's Ocean Supercluster, for taking the initiative to organize this workshop as a part of a lecture series to mark the 75 years anniversary of diplomatic relations between Canada and Iceland. I look forward to participating in this workshop and hope that it will be productive and informative for all of us. When we talk about blue economy, what do we refer to? For us here in Iceland, the blue economy is one of our core industries in a wide range of sectors, from tourism over energy to blue biotech or fisheries and aquaculture. We are an island engulfed in the vast Atlantic Ocean and fisheries, and have been, with farming, the nation's primary industries since Vikings settled here over 1,000 years ago. The industrialization came later to Iceland than to most other countries around us. And when Iceland industrialized, the industrialization came in the form of a small trawler at the beginning of the 20th century. But in the years since the first trawler came to Iceland, things have moved on, and the fishing industry has also. Instead of aiming merely on the quantity in the fishing industry, the emphasis has extended towards more innovative and sustainable approach. Today, we focus on sustainable blue economy, where all components are constantly striving towards more innovative and greener solutions, not only in fisheries, but also in all the other aspects of the blue economical activities found today. Iceland is a country where innovation is embedded in its economy and culture. It is a society where innovation is the foundation of a cultural and economic quality of life. In many ways, Iceland is a model for other nations in terms of sustainable development, in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Through we can always do better, and we aim to do so. Both Iceland and Canada are highly industrialized and progressive societies that have in recent years been leading an innovative approach towards the economy, with emphasis on sustainable use of our blue resources. Today we are celebrating 75 years anniversary of diplomatic relations, but these two North Atlantic countries have much longer relationship. Their history is intertwined through migration in the 19th century, but more than anything through being a fishing nation pursuing the same ocean. Because as we are all aware of, the world ocean knows no borders. This has, amongst other things, led to various and strong bilateral collaboration between these two nations in research and innovation. An example of this is a collaboration between the Iceland Ocean Cluster and Canada's Ocean Supercluster. The aim of collaboration between these two clusters is to achieve a stronger and more cohesive bonds that will create added value for all actors involved. The topic of the current session, Oceans, the Blue Economy and Innovation, draws my attention to the question on how the blue economy can play a vital role in the decarbonization of our economy. This can be done, for example, through offshore renewable energy, but also by further developing the blue bioeconomy. To mention two of the blue bioeconomy activities that can be, and in cases are, accelerated through ocean clusters, are turning algae or fish waste into low carbon plastics, providing healthy nutrition at a much lower carbon footprint than land-based animal proteins for sustainable fishing or aquaculture. And to highlight the activities of the Iceland Ocean Cluster, we can mention fish skin as a wound care or collagen and cosmetics made from enzymes from inner fish organ. To wrap up, the transition towards blue and circular economy is in full speed, and the activities therein is a part of the solution of our many society challenges today, such as climate crisis, food security, and renewable energy. I would like to repeat what I said in the beginning. I hope this will be a productive venue for future collaboration between our nations, and I'm looking forward to listen some more. Good luck to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for actually thought-provoking opening remarks. And I will give the floor now to Thor Sigfússon to give an introduction to the Iceland Ocean Cluster.
Ministers, Ladies and gentlemen, very pleased to be with you here. I'm extremely glad to be able to say that we've had a long and interesting relations with Canada so far. And I'm a dedicated fan of the Canada's super ocean cluster. So it's definitely something that I would like to pursue even further to see possibilities for us to work together. My theme here today is basically business opportunities in the blue economy in Iceland. What we did also as a part of our homework between the clusters was actually to look at the mapping of the possible mapping of the strengths of each cluster and see where we might find ways to collaborate through that. But let me begin first by telling you a little bit about the cluster that is now 10 years old, established in 2012, with over 200 startups created within the cluster, with now 300 billion Icelandic crowns being invested in companies that have gone through our channels, being a business accelerator and innovation hub, privately held, so it's quite different from many other cluster models, but still with very much the same elements, which is to connect people. And these bubbles will show you basically the fields that we're working on. Of course, fisheries and fish processing being the largest, and then various supporting services and new spin-offs getting out with aquaculture, not least R&D and education and training is a big thing, etc., etc. We have also been expanding, given these 10 years now of operation, we've been expanding abroad. We have now sister clusters in the US. The biggest one is New England Ocean Cluster. Then we have a cluster in Alaska, to name a few. We have also connected clusters, and I think a big part of the whole thing for us now is basically to build this network of clusters and find ways to get them to collaborate. To begin with, I would like to stress that some of the areas where we're seeing now growing quite fast, and the fastest in Iceland in the blue economy, is the offshore and land-based farming. To the left, you have a new drawing of one of the largest land-based farms that are going to be set up in Iceland. On the right picture, you have the offshore farming. Both have challenges, but both have also shown that there are huge opportunities in Iceland in this industry. And we are seeing opportunities to use our geothermal power, our hot water, our clean water in this respect. We could also say that some of our strengths lie in the supporting of the tech industry for seafood, and the seafood side stream processing technology, which of course with some of the largest companies in the world, including Marel. We have also specialized in cooling technology for a longer shelf life, genetics for fish farms. So we have taken this niche from the seafood industry and definitely taken it all the way, due to the fact that our seafood industry is of course one of the most effective and efficient industry in the world. What has since come out of it are all kinds of spin-offs, which now are actually companies that some of them are actually bigger than the largest seafood companies in Iceland. This is one of the things that we have been focusing on here in Iceland. This is the full utilization of fish. Sadly, our neighbors, many of them, are throwing away nearly half of the fish. The byproducts, some call it waste. Icelanders never use the word waste. These are side streams, and we're seeing opportunities in utilize the whole fish, just as our minister mentioned. Not only the fish skin, but the intestines, even the fish heads are dried and with geothermal power. So this is one of the areas that we have specialized in here in Iceland, and we think there is a huge opportunity for us to collaborate with our neighboring friends to find ways to create from these amazing proteins that are in the ocean and are sadly used for dump sites in many countries. I would like to show you the growth in the Iceland blue economy with this simple picture. You would see both high growth and then low growth and new tech. If you look at the right side, you'll see where we find ourselves in. We find ourselves, of course, large in the fisheries and what I call the 100% fish. Offshore aquaculture is growing quite fast. Land farming is starting, but has huge potentials. Seafood processing technology, biotech, genomics, algae, renewable energy, which Nanna will actually talk about here a little bit later on, or new resources. What we wanted to do as a part of our homework, mentioning here, sorry, IT and marine software, tracking technology, etc., was to try to find what are the similarities, where do the strengths lie. If we look at the Canadian strengths, where we would see an opportunity for Iceland to get some of the knowledge from our Canadian friends, we would say battery storage is a huge issue for us. The biotech, I believe, for a small country like ours, even though we've been successful, there are huge opportunities in collaboration in that field. Autonomous vehicles, alternative fuels, wind and wave energy. Given where we come from and where we can add to the Canadian knowledge, I believe definitely, of course, our seafood industry and the 100% fish ideology is, of course, one of the main areas where we can see our strength being beneficial. We also see health and nutraceuticals from our ocean products, where we have actually been heading in many fields on a world scale. We see the cooling system, we see the seafood process technology as well. So just to give you an idea of where we might see some of the collaborations in the coming years, I think it is one of the super valuable for us to try to figure out our strengths and where we can set that together. And I appreciate very much the opportunity to work with our super cluster from Canada to find these elements of surprise surprise for us, many of us, knowing the knowledge from Canada's side in terms of the wind and wave energy, which I think is of huge interest to Icelanders right now. And as I said, battery storage, biotech, etc. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Thor and Kendra. My name is Jane Tabor. I'm the moderator for today. We've got a panel of some very interesting people who I'm going to introduce. The panel is going to run about 25 minutes or so. And so we're going to move through things fairly quickly. So you've heard from the cluster CEOs. And now let me introduce our other panelists. We've got two dynamic entrepreneurial women who are with us today. Nana Baldvinsdottir is an energy economist and the CEO of Iceland H2, which is a hydrogen company that wants to make Iceland's low-cost green hydrogen available around the globe. Welcome, Nana. And we've got Sam McDonald. She's coming to us from Kitchener-Waterloo. She's the president of Deep Trekker. It's a manufacturer of affordable underwater, remotely operated vehicles and submersible robots used for environmental and industrial situations. So welcome to the four of you. And I wanted to start with Nana, just to tell us a little bit more briefly about your business and the attractiveness of the Iceland Ocean Cluster for your business.
Thank you very much. So it's a real pleasure to be here. Ministers, ambassador, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nana, and I am the co-founder of Iceland H2. So we are a hydrogen development company that is looking to bring commercial scale hydrogen production to Iceland. Our company is just about a year and a half old, and we located in the Iceland Ocean Cluster quite early. And really what attracted us initially to the cluster was, a low cost and flexible rental agreement for a growing startup. And of course, that sense of community that is really full of eventual end users of hydrogen, we hope. Now, hydrogen or green hydrogen, as you may know, is a carbon-free fuel that is suitable for use in hard to decarbonize sectors, including long-haul trucking, aviation, and of course, maritime applications. And hydrogen is also an important ingredient, if you will, in other low-carbon fuels known as e-fuels. So hydrogen in its purest form is probably not going to be suitable for maritime applications because it takes up a lot of space. And I don't need to tell this crowd, but on ships, everything is about minimizing space. So to make hydrogen take up less space, we can bind it with other atoms. So we can make we can combine green hydrogen with either atmospheric or industrial sources of carbon to make methanol or e-kerosene or e-crude, or we can combine hydrogen with nitrogen to make ammonia, which is also an important potential fuel for maritime applications. Now, Iceland is an excellent place to make hydrogen, and I'll tell you why. All of our power is renewable, and most of it is actually certified renewable power. So in order to make electric fuels, you have these fairly high front end investment costs, plus operational costs for the facility, which is largely electricity. So here in Iceland, the power system is sustainable. It's base load from hydropower and from geothermal. So we have abundant, low cost, sustainable power, and we have abundant, sustainable water supply. This combined with access to zoned land means that we can do this. We can do this here. Now, the only reliance on fossil fuels that we have here in Iceland comes from transport and the fishing fleet. So our car fleet is swiftly being electrified, maybe not swiftly enough for some people, but other forms of transport will probably not be directly electrified with batteries. So that's like long haul or tourism. It's just physically not gonna happen because the batteries are too large. The batteries become too heavy for long haul anything. So that's why those sectors are usually looking to to hydrogen. So all of these kilojoules that we now run our land transport and our maritime applications on that currently come from fossil fuels, we're going to have to transition that to low carbon fuels. So this energy transition, we've already done this. We already did lots of hard work here in Iceland. We had a first energy transition where we electrified, where we based our electricity system on renewables, and then we did it again with our heating. But this energy transition is going to be quite different from the previous two. And that is that this energy transition is not going to be led by the energy sector. This transition is going to be led by the needs of the user. So it's the user who's going to determine which low carbon option is going to be best for that user, whether that's at the sectoral level or at the individual company level. But it's just an interesting thing for the Icelandic energy sector to realize that they're not going to be able to just sort of write down how this is going to happen the way that the previous two transitions underwent. So when you're talking about decarbonizing like a maritime project, it's the fishery. If we're talking about a fishery, it's their operational considerations, it's their infrastructure requirements, it's their storage capabilities. That's going to determine what low carbon fuel that operator is going to choose. And then, the energy sector has to be ready.
Okay, sorry about that. I did get Sam in here now to tell us a little bit about, and thank you very much for that. And I'll get Sam in now to tell us a little bit about Deep Trekker and what you're up to and why the supercluster in Canada is important to you.
Well, thanks, Jane, and I really appreciate it. But I was very much enjoying Nana's discussions, having dabbled a little bit with hydrogen fuel cell technology in my garage. We'll have to have an offline about the major explosions that took place. Nobody was injured. No people. But first off, thank you so much to the ministers, the leaders of our clusters, and of course Jane for keeping us all in line. And then most importantly, everyone who stopped by to join in and listen to our talks today. We really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about my company, about Canada in general, and how the supercluster here and clusters around the world are really helping to bring Deep Trekker and other Canadian ocean technology to the forefront on the world stage. So Deep Trekker, deeptrekker.com, if you're interested in checking us out. We're on what I like to call the fourth coast of Canada in the Great Lakes region of Ontario. So we like to say coast to coast to coast, but I'll add another one to that. And I did grow up in the Great Lakes area and was fascinated by a lot of the stories that I read in the Great Lakes area about the shipwrecks. So what lied beneath, those fated nights. I ended up stumbling across a book and was reading about all these shipwrecks that were in the Great Lakes and the stories behind them. But I wasn't a scuba diver at the time and wanted to have a toy or a tool to go down and explore some of those wrecks. And while I was working on my scuba license, and I really got fascinated by what was out there in terms of ocean robotics, and decided to partner up with my partner Jeff and build one of these things to go exploring beneath the waves. And we did. We came up with the first ROV, the first internal battery powered remotely operated vehicle. We didn't know that at the time, but it seemed to be something that no one had had stumbled on before or thought about, and we made a really great and accessible remotely operated vehicle. And as soon as we made, you know, really a remotely operated camera that you could drive around, people wanted to do more sophisticated things with it, adding different types of sensors, different types of sonar, and then of course of late getting into more autonomous functions of that for doing things in the ocean space and the ocean asset or underwater asset space. So doing environmental work, looking at both natural and artificial reefs, you know, checking on the species that are existing in different areas where human impact or environmental impact is taking place. So doing studies of the different types of flora and fauna that are in those spaces, and very much involved with the aquaculture industry. We were found by aquaculture companies in Chile to start with, or excuse me, in Norway to start with, and then Chile soon after. And from our very inception, started to do work in the inspections of nets, of moorings, of fish mortalities, lift up systems, all the things that are involved in aquaculture. And I do believe that aquaculture does offer a wonderful future for food security around the world. But it, like every other form of agriculture and human impact feed sources, it does need to be done sustainably. And we really aim to do that. And with our project with the Ocean Supercluster, we look to use automation, intelligence, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to bring that to the next level. And the Ocean Supercluster has really allowed us to, you know, meet up with other companies that can enable that. We're really great at making robots, but we don't know anything about making sonars and positioning systems, and certainly about AI internally. And we're able to accelerate these types of projects by bringing in other companies from within Canada and beyond to bring Deep Trekker to the forefront and really enable us to make great equipment for the aquaculture and ocean industries.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. And just continuing with you, Sam, there was just a recent announcement that you're involved now in a project, about a $7 million project to survey offshore wind farms. So what is just quickly, what does that look like? And I want to bring Kendra in to tell us why that was something that was attractive to the supercluster.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm really fascinated with hydrogen, but offshore wind as an electricity source to build those fuels and other electricity is becoming very, very important for the world overall. And so we were excited when another Canadian company, Voyas, approached us about being part of this project AeroWind. So if you can envision an autonomous surface vessel by a company called HydroServe, who's new to Canada, and then we are the ROV that flies out of that autonomous surface vessel and using other autonomy functions as well as advanced imaging system from Voyas. So we're installing a 3D point cloud laser system as well as a stereo camera system, and a software company called IVA that we're using both to create those models of the monopiles and the underwater infrastructure around the wind industry, as well as navigating both the ROV and the surface vessel. So really advanced stuff happening out of right here out of Canada.
That's fantastic. Okay, Kendra, what was it about that that project that attracted your supercluster?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think in line with several of our projects, and back to that, it ticks the boxes in terms of a project that is focused on, digital. So it's a, advanced technology solution. It's got a clear collaboration in terms of the multiple partners, and it's bringing an international partner to Canada, which is incredibly exciting. It's also in the sustainable space in terms of working in offshore wind. And what we're seeing in Canada right now is, although we don't have a lot of offshore wind farms from a Canadian perspective, we have a lot of wind, but we also have a lot of land, so that we can put a lot of offshore wind, a lot of wind on land. What we are seeing is Canada really developing a number of solutions in terms of inspection solutions, infrastructure, species monitoring, and those are solutions that are relevant to the world, just given the speed with which offshore wind is developing worldwide.
Right, well, thank you for that. And Thor, I wanted to ask you the same thing about Nana's project. So what was it that really appealed to you, that compelled you to get her involved?
As Nana indicated, the importance of work is huge. We of course have our fishing fleet being one of the most important businesses in Iceland still, of course. But at the same time, we realize that this is going to be the challenge for us if we're going to get the emission targets that we have set, is to get these new alternative fuels, more sustainable fuels, so into action. So that's basically our interest has been there And when she came to us, we were absolutely celebrating. I must tell you, I didn't tell Nana that. I looked very sort of like natural that day, but the fact was we were super excited to have them on board.
Okay, that's great. And Nana, you're just, as you said, your company is very young. And would you be able to scale, do what you want to do without being attached or supported by the Iceland Ocean Supercluster?
I don't know if I'm sure I'd be able to. I'm not sure I would want to. I think that, you know, one of the things that's really important to understand about these energy transition projects that we're trying to move along here in Iceland is that the projects are so collaborative, and it's not, you don't just need two parties. You often need 5 or 6 parties coming together. So it's the power producer, it's the e-fuel producer, it's the infrastructure provider, it's the harbor, all the infrastructure requirements on the harbor, it's the ship owner, it's the ship operator. Sometimes that's not even the same party, it's finance. So it's 5 or 6 parties coming together, stepping forward in tandem. And, you know, the nature is collaborative. And if you want to get anything done in the maritime sector, you have to understand the risks that these companies face. You have to understand how they make decisions. And otherwise you can't approach them with any solutions. So that's a really, really important part for us at EdenH2 is being located amongst the users and being located amongst investors that are looking at this space. And really, you know, of course, right now, currently allowing us to really deepen and develop our understanding, but also incredibly important is in the future, you know, once the projects start to get going, I've got a network of people now that I can call that help me along. So, or are of course potential future partners.
Right. Okay.
So no, I wouldn't want to. I enjoy being there. Mm-hmm.
Good. And Thora, you've talked about, I mean, you've been in this business longer than Kendra has, 10 years now, or a little bit longer than that. And you've talked about trust. So just let's explore that a little bit more, that for these companies, these networks that Nana is talking about to come together, there still has to be trust. So how do you work that into the cluster equation?
And it's the happy hours, of course. It's the off-site. No, I'm not kidding. I think it's so important. I'm obsessed with trust, so it's brilliant that you bring it up. But the fact is, it's something that has to be invested in for a long time. So we have felt it from the beginning when we started the cluster, just to get the fisheries to sit together, or people from various industries. They were looking at each other saying, we're competing. We were actually saying, try to look at the cake as a potential to enlarge it and work together. It took time. When we started to find out the low-hanging fruits, the projects that actually could lead to something for businesses, different businesses together, that made the whole difference.
Okay. And Kendra, I mean, is that something that you have come across as you've been I mean, you're young yet, what, 4 years with your supercluster? Have you found that to be an issue, or has that been an opportunity for you in terms of trust?
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of our big learning, collaboration is hard. When you get into the nitty gritty of budgets and IP sharing and delivery and all of those details in data sharing. And so it really does take trust to be able to, and you've got companies working together for the first time, and half of our life has been in a pandemic. So we started going everywhere and trying to have events all over the place to bring people together to meet with each other. And then all of a sudden we moved to a virtual world. So that's been good and bad in terms of trying to replicate that networking experience virtually. But at the same time, we've been able to really reach farther faster in terms of our events and participation, because we no longer got into where the physical events needed to take place. But it is absolutely crucial for people to be able to spend time together, get to know each other, and have the confidence that they can deliver an outcome together.
And then, you know, for the future, as we talked about, a young company that you have, but for the future, do you see anything else, any other opportunities now where you would like to move into another area in the Ocean Supercluster? What more would you like to do?
You're speaking to me.
Yes, I am.
Well, right now, our main focus. So I've been involved in the Icelandic energy transition for a number of years now. So I'm very aware of where the barriers are. And one of the things that is key is bringing the price of hydrogen down. So that's the area we're focusing on, trying to get the scale that will allow us to bring the price of hydrogen down, that will make it an actual option for companies. Once we've achieved that, once we have a sellable product that is at a very, very competitive rate, that's when I can start really doing the business development with the various sectors on the offtake in Iceland. And clearly, maritime sector is going to be a huge offtaker for us. But you know, I've been in this business for 20 years, and I'm just so tired of these little projects. I don't want to do little demo projects anymore. Like the oceans are acidifying, the climate is changing. This winter has been so incredibly strange in Iceland, and I know it's just going to get stranger. So the time is now for action, and then I feel like the time is now for scale. So that's what our focus is. Our focus is achieving that scale to make this an actual commercially viable option for all of these users. You know, the Icelandic, the fishery sector is incredibly innovative in Iceland. They are not risk averse. They are innovative. They are not afraid of change. So it's really, really, if you're responding to what they're saying, if you're making it less expensive, they'll do what's best. So I'm focused on that. I'm trusting that, and I'm going to deliver. So.
All right, that's good. And what about you, Sam? Because we're sort of thinking about the future of these super clusters, and you have a couple of projects. Do you see more in the future, or are these just one-offs for you?
I hope they're not one-offs, and certainly having two at once is, I think, interesting. We've hired a lot of engineers in the last little while, so we certainly are going to have to keep them busy once these projects are complete. And I do see both of the projects that we have underway bringing our technology stack way up, which means that we're going to be playing in new markets, in bigger markets, and in terms of, you know, really looking at how do we solve the information problems below the waves. I think more, you know, everyone looks at aerial drones and the industrial aspects of aerial drones to solve a lot of what's happening in terms of you know, environmental impacts and stewardships, as well as just keeping stuff running, right? So the world, even before it started changing on a rapid basis, you know, wind and weather and Mother Nature in general is sort of terrible for things underwater, and the aerial drone space is really setting up the idea of using robotics as inspection tools across, you know, really every industry that is either waterborne or water containing, and we can't do it alone. So I definitely know of a lot of the companies that are involved with the Ocean Supercluster, as well as in the ocean space in Canada, and really looking forward to the Ocean Supercluster bringing us opportunities to work together on even bigger projects as we go forward.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes, and Thor talked about making a deal. So let's make a deal here. Thor and Kendra, have you seen anything? Have you guys anything piqued your interest here? Is there something that you'd like to invest in, or maybe you'll be calling Kendra after this panel? I want to hear what's in your heads. Thor, you're on mute.
Well, we are actually now just realizing that there are now new innovations in Canada in terms of keeping energy, which I think could be one of the new areas that we are seeing will definitely have interest in. And so there is a company, actually, I'm not telling anything that's sort of confidential, but there's a company coming to Iceland now from Canada in that field, and we are once again, like so often with Canadians, super excited to have them. So there are lots of these happenings right now, but this is one of the areas that I think could be of huge interest to us. We also believe that our farming now, not only fisheries, but our farming experience on land, we are the largest in salmon, actually. Land farming have been in the past, even though it's going to be growing all around. These are areas that we see lots of potential to collaborate with our friends in Canada.
Okay. And Kendra, I know that you had spoken with Thor as you were setting up this, as you were developing and creating the Ocean Supercluster. Is there any great lessons that you have learned from Iceland, and anything that's piqued your interest today?
Yeah, so I mean, we've looked to Iceland from the very beginning, and especially because Iceland has been very, very focused on fish waste, and the supercluster was built to be very broad. And so there's benefits and lessons to be learned, I think, from each. I think, you know, as I listen today, I'm just reminded you can never have enough conversations in terms of raising awareness of what is going on. And every one of those conversations leads to another conversation. And so I think we've been, certainly as the Ocean Supercluster in Canada, focused over the last few years on sort of getting our portfolio together and just building the organization. Now it's really important to think about in some of the areas that we talked about. So whether it's fish processing, which is highly relevant to Canada, there's lots happening in Iceland. We have a few projects in Canada, whether it's cold storage, aquaculture. I think there's multiple topics where you can do a deeper dive, you know, with a smaller group of companies where they can really understand what's happening and look for opportunities to move forward.
Okay, thank you for that. And just before we leave, we've got one question for Nana. If you, I know my sound apparently is quite low here, so I'm hoping that you can hear me. And who is the target client for bringing down the cost of hydrogen in the maritime industry?
I mean, the target client would be a, the issue with these projects, if you want to get the scale, is you have to have an off taker. You have to have an off taker in order to get the project financed. So it's really difficult to get a project financed if you have a lot of lots of potential sales to a bunch of smaller users. So really what we've been focusing on is finding one creditworthy off taker of hydrogen that will allow us to pass through that cost savings to Icelandic users. And usually those users are abroad. So really our plan is now to get the project financed through offtake abroad, and then sell to the Icelandic market as it grows and pass that cost savings through. Once we get that done, then we can sell to anybody that wants to make e-fuels for maritime.
Well, thank you very much for that. And thank you for the terrific discussion today. We really appreciate it. I want to thank Thor, Nana from Iceland, of course, and Sam and Kendra here in Halifax and Kitchener-Waterloo. And before we go, I'm just going to throw the proceedings over to the Canadian ambassador to Iceland, Jeanette Menzies. Jeanette.
Thank you so much. I've also really enjoyed today, and I'm going to take a moment to introduce our parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry to provide the closing remarks. His bio was available on the invitation to the webinar, but just briefly, Mr. Andy Fillmore, he's a proud champion for his hometown of Halifax, was first elected as Member of Parliament for Halifax in 2015. And before being elected as Member of Parliament, he spent 20 years as an urban planner and community builder in private and public sector. So over to you, Andy. And then at the very end, I'll come back on the screen and just share with you what's next in our 75th anniversary webinar series. So stay tuned.
Okay, thanks so much, Ambassador Menzies, for that introduction and for our great chat last week. And thanks to both you and Ambassador Goodjohnson for inviting me to be with you today. Wonderful to be with you, Minister Sigurborn's daughter. Wonderful to meet you and hear your passion for Iceland's ocean cluster as well. And I have to say, well, it's a great pleasure for me to be here on behalf of Canada's Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, Francois-Philippe Champagne. I'm also very happy to be here just as myself, as I have a very keen interest in the ocean sector. But first and foremost, I just want to convey my best wishes to the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Iceland and Canada. And tremendous thanks as well to everyone for joining this call today. I've really enjoyed seeing people from all over sending their greetings to one another in the chat. Kendra, it's great to see you coming from a different part of Halifax today. Thank you for your Mi'kmaq land acknowledgement. I was going to add that it's kind of a fortuitous thing, that the Mi'kmaq name for Halifax is Chubuktuk, which means the Great Harbor, which is so appropriate to our conversation today, but also appropriate because Halifax is headquarters to Canada's Ocean Supercluster. It's the home of the Centre for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship, or COVE, home of the Ocean Frontier Institute, the Ocean Tracking Network, the fabled Dalhousie University Department of Oceanography, not to mention home port of Canada's East Coast Navy. So big harbor indeed. Now, as we've heard today from our distinguished panelists, there are significant opportunities for Canada and Iceland in the blue economy and in ocean innovation in general. This represents a huge opportunity with the global ocean economy, expected to double in value to $4 trillion by 2030, which outpaces growth of the broader economy by almost 20%, really remarkable. No, not surprisingly then, our government sees this as a great way to create good jobs for Canadians and to continue to build the ties between Canada and Iceland. We want to build a robust ocean community that is well connected, well equipped to rapidly innovate and commercialize solutions and to deliver on growing ocean opportunities. And while there is tremendous economic potential in our oceans, I also see potential in having a closer relationship with Iceland, a partnership that I hope does not go overlooked by any of us on the call today. Now, as the MP for Halifax and growing up here in Atlantic Canada, I see many shared experiences and values between our country and Iceland. We both know what it means to have our history and our identity shaped by the ocean. And that can be seen up and down the coast of Atlantic Canada with memorials in small harbors dedicated to the mariners who have lost their lives at sea, as in Iceland. And in Atlantic Canada, we still remember the price paid in livelihoods when the ocean's ecology was not managed sustainably, that saw fisheries close, and that forced Atlantic Canadians to leave home and find work elsewhere in the country and in the world in huge numbers, often in the oil and gas sector. We can also see how the blue economy is expanding Nova Scotia to be much more than a tourist destination, evolving from our license plate tagline of Canada's ocean playground to more and more have a bright future as Canada's ocean workshop. So I'm very conscious that as a coastal nation, Canada also bears a very special responsibility to ensure that it leverages ocean opportunities in safe and thoughtful and responsible and sustainable ways. And for these reasons, I think Iceland and Canada have a very bright future together based on these shared values. Values that have seen young people flocking back home to start families, entrepreneurs pursuing innovation, the revitalization of smaller communities, and a warm, welcoming nature to locals and visitors alike. I know from speaking to the ambassador that Atlantic Canada shares that with Icelanders as well. Collaboration between our two countries in the blue economy started over 5 years ago when members of our seafood sector, along with government representatives, visited Iceland on a mission to gain insights into your industry-leading seafood processing technology. Local processors have since acquired some of the Marel technologies they saw in practice, like the water jet portioning system. I understand as well that there have been exchanges between our marine sector and Iceland's ocean cluster on their success in using every part of a fish, an effort that, if replicated globally, can greatly improve the sustainability of this precious ocean resource. And Iceland's ocean cluster has reciprocated with a visit to our Center for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship, or COVE, in 2019. There is also a great track record of research collaboration between the two countries. The Marine Research Institute of Iceland is one of several international institutions partnering with Memorial University in Newfoundland, also on the east coast of Canada, and the Ocean Frontier Institute on sustainable capture fisheries projects. That's a project that will develop novel computer model-based assessments of specific cold water fish stocks and the ecosystems in which they live. It will also develop innovative technologies and strategies for fishing in the rapidly changing ecosystems of the Northwest Atlantic and the Canadian Arctic Gateway, which will significantly improve scientific advice to support successful and sustainable fisheries management in Canada and abroad. So those are a lot of words, but there's a lot behind those words. And clearly, Canada and Iceland have tremendous assets that in partnership can be leveraged to put innovation at the heart of a more resilient, sustainable, and inclusive economy. The bubbles in your cluster that Thor showed us align beautifully with our own bubbles. And I assure you that even though we call ours a super cluster, it's very clear that your cluster is super too. So we look forward to building on the timely discussion held today with Iceland to advance our shared objectives and values in ocean innovation and the blue economy. I look forward to visiting Iceland, I hope one day soon, maybe to join Thor at one of his happy hours. And so to close, I just want to once again thank every participant and the organizers that made this event a tremendous success. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Andy, for those thoughtful remarks, and I really appreciate your points on Iceland's cluster being a super cluster as well. In closing, I simply wanted to flag the topic of our next webinar as part of the 75th anniversary webinar series. And it will be taking place on March 17th at the same time. And the topic is on Indigenous knowledge and Western science. It will be a conversation with an organization, an enterprise, social enterprise called Smart Ice. And the webinar is an opportunity to participate in a conversation with Trevor Bell, who's the founder of Smart Ice, and his team. And it's a social enterprise that empowers northern communities to adapt to increasingly unpredictable ice conditions with remote monitoring technology and Indigenous knowledge. And so he will be having a conversation with his team members that are based across the Canadian Arctic, including in communities such as Pond Inlet, Nain, Arctic Bay, and Joe Haven. So this will be a really interesting conversation, and we're just hoping that the internet stays strong for us for that conversation, or else Leonard and I will have a long conversation to fill the time while we're trying to get connected. But anyway, thank you to everyone for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.